who is our P.A.D International Marshal, and she's also the Senior Counsel for the International Paper. I really appreciate you helping out tonight with maintaining health and wellness in the legal profession. I'm going to give the meeting controls over to Nicole, and if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to put it in the chat feature, and we'll be addressing those as we go along, or we'll do a Q&A at the end. And I hope you all enjoyed the presentation, and just give me one more second. And there you go, Nicole.
All right, good evening, everyone. As Andrew said, my name is Nicole Greta. I am the International Marshal for Phi Alpha Delta. Served in that role since last convention, and prior to that, I was a district justice and an assistant district justice. Originally from Pennsylvania, I now call Memphis home. Those of you who I may be friends with on Facebook know I travel quite a bit, and I'm currently coming direct to you guys from the West Coast. I'm making my first appearance in the Seattle area, where I will be joining some friends and fellow P.A.D. brother and sister on an Alaskan cruise. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those things as we get into our series tonight. But before we get too far away from it, I do want to thank our International Justice, Jay Ross, who's on the phone tonight, as well as our International Executive Board Member at Large, Michelle Isherwood, for their work on Initiative 1. I'd also like to thank the Executive Office for their hard work on that as well. For those of you that don't know, that's kind of revamping, making sure that we have good programming for our members. One of the things that we as an International Executive Board thought would be a good thing and a good way to reach as many members as possible in non-convention years especially was to do a webinar series. So I was happy to step up and present the second in our series. And as Andrew mentioned, it'll be about health and wellness and how to maintain that in the legal profession. So I hope that this is interactive. The last time I gave this presentation, it was live at a Young Lawyers Conference for the Tennessee Bar Association. And so I would encourage you guys to use the chat feature and to ask questions along the way. I don't want to spend the entire time talking, so I'd appreciate any questions along the way. Also, we will reserve some time at the end in case people have questions at that point. So just jump right into it. So I guess a good place for me to start would be how I came to a place where I decided that health and wellness had to be my first priority, both in my personal life as well as my professional life, and the efforts that I've undertaken to kind of get to that point. So for those of you who don't know me, I turned 38 years old in February. About 10 years ago, I had been in practice for just a few years. I was working at a medium-sized regional insurance defense law firm, which was, you know, make and break by how many .1s you could bill in a given day. It was a very competitive environment. It was an environment in which you were encouraged to work as much as possible and to do as little else as you possibly could. I thought that I was relatively healthy. I would work out frequently. I would work all day, go home, eat dinner, go to the gym, end up back at the office or in my home office doing more work. I came to a point in that portion of my career where I was at the office one day. We had just moved into a new building, and I was walking down the hall, and all of a sudden I felt very weird. And I thought, what in the world? What's going on? Maybe I'm dehydrated. Maybe I'm tired. I hadn't gotten much sleep the night before. By the time I made it to the ladies' room, there was one of the administrative assistants in there, and she looked at me and she said, "Are you okay?" And I looked at myself in the mirror and realized the whole entire right side of my face was sagging. I was struggling to form words. I knew what I wanted to say, but I couldn't get the words out. And so I immediately thought that I was having a stroke, which at 28 years old was obviously very concerning. I had a friend drive me to the hospital. They did a number of tests, ultimately decided that I was not having a stroke, but that I was having a very severe migraine that was mimicking stroke symptoms, and that was, you know, leading me to feel the way that I was. They also determined that it was brought upon by the stress in my life and that, I needed to somehow try and manage that. At that point, I took a little bit of a leave from my job, went home to Pennsylvania, spent some time with family, and really just tried to recenter myself and try to decide what was important in my life and what I needed to do to change things so that didn't happen again. So that's kind of what got me on this kick, so to speak, but being an advocate for finding ways to maintain health and wellness. The other thing, we're going to move to my first slide, the other thing that was really shocking to me when I started looking into some of the underlying issues behind work-life balance and how to attain that and the struggles that people go through were some of the statistics. So for those of you who are looking at the WebEx and can see my slides, I'm going to also read them because I know some people are just on the phone today. But the statistics that I have up here are from an ABA study that was done back in 2015. They polled almost 13,000 attorneys and were trying to study the rates of substance abuse and other mental health concerns. During their study, they determined that 61% of lawyers have experienced anxiety at some point in their career, 46% had experienced depression at some point in their career, and 23% had experienced mild or higher levels of stress than they previously had when they entered the legal profession. The other statistics that were very concerning to me was that those folks who suffered from depression, anxiety, and or increased stress levels were also 60% more likely to abuse alcohol. Also, lawyers under the age of 40 were the ones who were most affected by these issues. And so I say all that to say that I think that a lot of times there are underlying issues that can prevent us from maintaining health and wellness. And so in order to implement and use some of the techniques and tips that I'm going to give you throughout this webinar, I would encourage you to also take a look at yourself and see if you have good habits in how you interact with alcohol, with signs of depression, signs of anxiety. I know most people who go to law school are very type A in one way or another, and even if you don't end up becoming a litigator like I am, even if you're not in court trying cases and doing all those things, transactional attorneys have tons of deadlines that they're up against that can be both stressful and cause anxiety. The law can be very isolating, which can lead to depression. So I just encourage you guys all to take a close look at yourself and some of your habits to see if there are some of those underlying signs of anxiety, depression, or if you're having increased stress levels, and would encourage you to use some of the tips that I'm going to suggest in terms of how to manage and deal with those issues. So again, some more basic points. We're going to go over the infamous three-word phrase, work-life balance. There's a number of definitions that are out there. For those of you who have the screen in front of you, you can see that I've used it as a term that describes the balance you need between the time you allocate to your work and the time you allocate to other aspects of your life. Other aspects of your life obviously can be your personal interests, spending time with family and friends, social activities, wellness activities, other leisure activities. Beyond making sure that we as individual lawyers and members of Phi Alpha Delta, that we are healthy, work-life balance is also important because it affects the other relationships you have. It affects your relationships with your coworkers, with your family members, with members of your community, your neighbors, if you're part of a faith community. All of those things can be affected if you are not balanced in the time that you allot to your work and the time that you allot to your personal life. So is it attainable? I think a lot of people would say there's no way that I can have a work-life balance given the nature of my legal career. I work someplace where I'm expected to be there as early as possible and to stay as late as I can, even the days that I want to leave early, I have 10 more things to do, and so I can't get out the door, and I end up staying much later than I initially intended to do. But I would encourage us to not focus on what I would call a very old or antiquated concept where the good lawyers or the best lawyers are the lawyers who work the longest. I would say that the best lawyers are the lawyers who work the smartest, the lawyers who are efficient with their time, the lawyers who have allocated various time on their calendar to different parts of their life, not just to their work, whether that is making time to attend your children's sporting events or other activities, whether that's making time to serve on the board of a nonprofit association and attending their meetings and being a part of what they're doing, whether that's time that you're spending going for a walk or just sitting outside and enjoying nature. It's important to make sure that you have different things that you're doing other than just living and breathing the work that you do as a lawyer. I think that a good way to come to that point and to have some balance is to create what a lot of people call balancing checks, which is basically just a list of things that you need to feel balanced. So what I need to feel balanced may be different than what Dana needs to feel balanced or than what Erin needs to feel balanced. For me, balance is having some time at a fitness studio or having some time in a yoga class or going for a walk or spending time with friends. Whatever it is that balances you, you need to find a way to make sure that you're having that be a consistent part of your life so that you're not constantly focused on your job and only the things that are demanded of you. I also think that when you are more balanced, you're going to be more productive at work because you're going to have something else that you need to be at, something else that you have on your schedule, something else that you have committed yourself to. And so it forces you in a lot of ways to be more efficient with time management. It forces you to be more cognizant of what projects you take on, recognizing obviously that I know that a number of you guys who are on the call today are young alumni, and recognizing obviously that you have bosses and partners and senior partners that you answer to. But I would challenge you to set boundaries and to set them as early as you can in your legal career, because it took me a long time to realize that no is a complete sentence. And obviously you can't tell your senior partner no, but you can tell your senior partner, I'm sorry, I actually can't take on that new project right now, and here's why. And whether here's why is because you already have 10 other projects, or whether here's why is, I'm sorry, I've planned to go on an Alaskan cruise, and I've been planning this cruise for however long. And that's something that's important to me, and that's time that I need to recenter myself and to and in order to be able to be a better employee. A lot of studies have shown that all professionals, not just lawyers, who are well-balanced, who feel that they have a work-life balance, who make time to eat well, to exercise, that those folks are generally going to be more productive employees because they're not constantly stressed out. They're not constantly worried and concerned about how they can balance and how they can do everything that they need to do. The other thing that I would suggest that you do is that you, in addition to these balancing checks, figuring out what works for you, I would also recommend that you create a work-life plan. And I think that can change as your work and your life goes forward and moves and changes. For example, when I first started practicing, like I mentioned, I worked at a high-volume insurance defense law firm. I had to prove myself, for lack of a better word, in order to show the people that I work with.
Necessary from that conversation you needed to tell me? No.
That
I don't think so.
So as I was saying, when I was an insurance defense attorney, I had to find a way to balance
white privilege thing.
had to find a way to balance the time that I was spending in the office and the time that I was spending outside of the office. That was hard for me because when I first started practicing law, I had just moved to a new city. I didn't really know anyone. So essentially my life was my job because I didn't have anywhere else to go. I didn't have anything else to do. And so I took a step back and I thought, well, what are some of the things that I used to do before I moved to Memphis that I enjoyed? And some of those were being part of a faith community, being part of a gym. So I did both of those things. I joined the YMCA. I started going to the Catholic church that was down the street from me. And I slowly but surely started to find some balance in my work, in my life, and that I was doing things that were important to me. But I still realized that I had to work 12 hours a day because that was the nature of where I was at my point in my career. So I just had to find a way to balance it. Fast forward 12 years, I now work for an in-house legal department. As Andrew mentioned, I do litigation for International Paper, and for those of you who aren't familiar with the company, we make obviously paper, but we also make a lot of other things. We make corrugated, which is used to make boxes. Probably 50% of the Amazon boxes that show up at your house have our logo on the bottom. We also make fluff pulp, which is used in things like diapers and other absorbent products. But in any event, we have facilities all over the world, all over the continental U.S., and I handle personal injury cases for the company. So that's been a different challenge because I find myself traveling here, there, and everywhere, trying to sometimes wake up, figure out where am I, what time zone am I in. The thing that has allowed me to stay balanced in doing that is that when I am in Memphis, I make sure to go to my fitness studio. I make sure to take a fitness class. When I'm not in Memphis, I make sure to carve out time in my day to go to the hotel gym or to go for a walk. One of the properties I stayed at earlier this week had a walking trail. And so I would go out one day and walk. I'd go to the gym the other day. So it's just a matter of figuring out what that work-life plan is for you. The days that I'm in the office, in my current role, I generally try to have a normal office day, an 8 to 5 or a 9 to 6, something like that. Whereas the days that I'm traveling, I try to give myself a break. Like if I've traveled for 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, whatever the case might be to get somewhere, in 10 years ago, I would have felt, oh, well, I just missed the whole entire day in the office. I now need to work 8 hours, and I'm not going to go to bed till 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'll get up and do it all over again. Don't beat up on yourself. At the end of the day, there's always going to be more work to do. More work is good. More work means that you're valued. It means that people want to hire you as their attorney. It means that people value the work that you're doing, and they want to give you work. So don't beat yourself up about those types of things, but try and find a way that you can create that work-life plan and that you can reevaluate it at different points in your career, when you're changing from one job to the next, maybe when you're checking in to see if it's someplace that you want to continue to be, whether it's someplace you want to continue to work, and really just trying to find a way to balance that all out. So in addition, or I guess in conjunction with that, part of creating these balancing checks and creating this work-life plan is, basically, in my opinion, a 5-step approach, or I have a 5-step approach. The first thing is defining your values and your priorities. Values are the things that you're most naturally drawn to, whereas your priorities are the things that you feel are more important than others. In order to set your priorities, you should always be considerate of the underlying values that are important to you. But you should also, as I think I've been saying throughout here, recognize that your priorities may change for different reasons. They may change because the nature of your job changes. They may change because you have a change in your personal life. Maybe you have to care for an elderly parent or relative, or, you know, you're going through a divorce, or your children that have been home for 18 years are now going off to college. I mean, those are all significant personal life changes that are going to affect what your priorities are. And they're going to affect how you create this work-life plan and how you make sure that you have balance in that work-life plan. The other step, or the next thing that you should consider, is identifying your balance distractions. So some things that distract or have been distracting to me is that I think that as lawyers, especially those of us who got into law because they wanted to help people, I know that's why I became a lawyer, I think we oftentimes live for others' expectations, and we live for other people's approval, and therefore we're constantly putting the needs of other people ahead of our own. And in doing that, a lot of times our health and our wellness and our well-being suffers. So again, I would encourage you to identify that if that is a distraction for you, if that is a reason why you don't feel balanced, to try and set some boundaries. And to try to, again, remember and recognize that no is a complete sentence. The other thing that can be distracting, obviously, is electronics. You know, we live in a world where everyone is constantly available. Everyone is constantly on their cell phones or computers or iPads or any other type of electronic device. And, you know, that can be distracting. If you're sitting there and you're working on a brief and you're trying to get that done and you constantly see your email notifications coming up throughout the day, it's hard not to want to go over there and pick up that email and see what it says and see if you need to deal with it at that time. So if that's distracting to you, turn off those notifications. There's a feature in there. There's a feature in there that allows you to to turn that off. The other thing that can be distracting, and this is something that I have only recently really started to address, are activities, organizations, people, things that can just sap energy or sap your time. I always have said that it seems hardest to get rid of the most toxic things, people, and activities in your life because for whatever reason, they're just there, and it takes effort and energy to get rid of them. But again, those can all be things that are taking away from the ultimate goal of attaining this work-life balance. Dana, I did see your question. I'm going to try to go through these next three questions. But the third thing, in my opinion, is one of the most important things. And this is something that I only recently started doing, building not available time blocks into your schedule. I went to a CLE about 5 years ago, and that was what the presenter recommended, that you should have time on your schedule where you're not available. At the time, I was working for a large insurance company, and I thought, oh, wow, this is a great idea. I'm going to do that. Even if it's just 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour each day, I'm going to do that. Didn't sit well with my superiors, and I realized that that wasn't the best place for me to work because that was something that I needed in order to be able to just have some peace. My friend calls it executive time, and he likes to block it into his schedule every day. For me, currently, it's the gym, the fitness studio that I joined back in October. I put those classes on my schedule, on my calendar, just like it's a regular appointment. My assistant knows that's where I am. If it's truly an emergency, that fitness studio happens to be right next to my office, so she literally could come over and find me if she needed to, but she's not going to do that because what I do in my line of work, nothing's truly an emergency that can't wait for an hour until my class is over. The other one we've kind of talked about and touched on a little bit already, develop boundaries at work and communicate those boundaries to your employer. Again, I think this is one that is harder for younger alumni in so much as you are going to obviously have somebody you're answering to, somebody that you report to. But I would just encourage you to be open. If the demands of your personal life dictate that you need to drop your son or your daughter off at school every morning, and that means you can't get to the office at 9, but your significant other can pick them up at the end of the day, and you can stay till 6. Have that conversation with your employer. Set those boundaries. Let them know, hey, my family is my number one priority. I need to be sure that I am giving them the attention they deserve. That doesn't mean to take away from anything that I'm going to offer and build with this company or this law firm, but I need to be the best version of me that I can be, and in order to be that person, I need to be a good mom or I need to be a good dad. So, that's all very important. The other thing is make sure people know what your time or office hours are. In addition to letting your boss know, obviously, make sure he or she's okay with that. So let your coworkers know, hey, this is my available time. This is when I'm here. Let your clients know that these are your office hours. Be very deliberate in making sure that you're working during those office hours, which I know, hey, I'm very guilty of that. I say my office hours are X to Y, and then, people get emails from me in the middle of the night. Given the nature of what my role is now, I hire outside counsel a lot to work with us on the various cases we have throughout the United States. And so some of those people are folks that I've known since law school, people that I've met along the way in the different organizations I'm involved with, including P.A.D. And so they are often the ones who will call me out on it and say, hey, why were you working at 9 o'clock last night? I thought in-house lawyers have this cush 9-to-5 job. Sometimes that is, and sometimes it's not. But the other thing I would encourage you to do in terms of those boundaries is commit to taking time off. I think that as attorneys, we oftentimes think we can't take vacation or everything. And if we take vacation, yeah, it's great when we're on vacation, but then we come back and it's chaos. Even if that may be true, given whatever it is you may do in your career, I still think we all need time to check out. We all need time to be unavailable. We all need time to relax and reflect and rejuvenate ourselves. I've tried really hard leading up to this vacation I'm about to be on once our webinar is over to get a lot of things done. And I've worked a lot of long hours in the past few weeks so that when I get on the boat to Alaska on Saturday, I can truly enjoy myself and enjoy time with my friends and hopefully meet new friends and experience new things. The fifth one is the one, again, that I think a lot of people struggle with, and that's asking for help and recognizing and appreciating that you can't do everything. You're only one person. You can only do so much. There's only so many hours in the day. And it's okay to say, uncle. It's okay to say, I need help. It's okay to say, like I said earlier, no, I actually can't get to that, and here's why. And that is all, in the end, beneficial to your boss, to your clients, to the projects you're working on. I mean, if you're constantly trying to put your hand in this and this and this and this, you're never going to do any one thing well, because you're going to constantly be distracted trying to keep up with all that time. So back to Dana's question. For those of you who aren't on the chat, Dana wants to know whether or not can't say the word suggestions, but what suggestions would we have for somebody who's just graduated, who's looking for a job? She says, I have a feeling that it takes time to find a balance. Is that normal? Absolutely, 100% normal. I've been practicing since 2007. I graduated law school in 2006, and I still feel that way. I mean, every day I'm checking in. Every day I'm trying to see, is it balanced? Some days are better than others, and some days are not so good. So I think that that's okay. Again, we shouldn't beat up on ourselves. You got to figure out what works for you. And what worked for 26-year-old Nicole Greta certainly does not work for 38-year-old Nicole Greta. So I think that, again, you have to recognize and appreciate that as your career changes, as your personal life changes, what is a work-life balance and what is a healthy and well version of yourself is not always going to be the same. So I think those are all normal feelings, Dana. Good luck in the job search, and I know you'll find a great job that's perfect for you. We also have a great suggestion from our international justice, Jay Ross. He said that he went to a law firm management course where they swore by blocking time and also turning off your Facebook and email notifications or checking on them a few times a day. So yeah, that's something that I tried a while back, turning off the Facebook notifications, and it was amazing how much time I felt like I got back in my day because I wasn't constantly checking them or constantly seeing them pop up. The other thing that I've heard at a couple different CLEs that I've gone to over the years is, you know, if you get home from the office or you're going to a function, whatever, leave your phone in the car. If you're going to a meeting, you don't need your phone. If you get home from work, you know, go put your phone on the charger in the other room, make dinner, sit down, watch some TV, read a book, whatever it is you do to unwind. You know, the distraction that an electronic causes, even if you're not constantly looking at it, statistics and studies have shown is, you know, they encourage you not to sleep in the same room as your cell phone, for example. So having that time where you're checked out or where things are turned off is definitely very important from everybody. And I agree with what Jay just said too. Every time you make a change, it takes time to adjust. I mean, that's succinctly what I've been trying to say for about the past 20 minutes in one sentence. I've been in my current job for about 2 years now, and I feel like it's only been within the last 3 or 4 months that I've finally have hit a groove. And that's not to say that I don't love this job. It's by far the best legal job that I've had since I graduated law school. But it's been a constant learning experience. It's a huge business. It's a ton of people that I'm accountable and reliable and responsible to. It's a ton of travel. I'm constantly learning about new states and their laws, you know, working with people, technically managing and being in charge of people who've been practicing law longer than I've been alive, who like to remind me that they've been practicing law longer than I've been alive. Those are all challenges, and those are all things that, you know, have made it that it's taken me, you know, about 1.5 years to get to a point where I felt like I was balanced again, or at least balanced in a way that I needed to be at this point in my career. I thought that was a good series of questions there, guys. So if you have any more, keep them coming. I'm going to move on to the next slide. We've talked about some of the things on here already. You know, scheduling time for yourself, scheduling time for your clients and coworkers. You know, that's setting your office hours. This is when I'm going to be here. Sticking to the schedule, establishing those boundaries. One thing, this was something that, or is something that my mentor struggles with, we talk about quite often. I think I've inherited this trait from her as well, is the when to answer email, when to return phone calls. So one thing that she, and a lot of people I know struggle with, you get an email, you feel like you instantly need to respond to it. You get a phone call, maybe you don't take it right away, but you feel like you immediately need to reply to that call, whether it's to call that person back or to answer their question in an email or have your assistant call them back. But it's really trying to figure out when you need to respond to those non-emergency calls. Again, went to a time management CLE several years ago, and the recommendation that they had was that you had a set period of time each day where you would respond to those non-emergency calls, those non-emergency emails. Maybe it was the first thing you did after you got back from lunch, or maybe it was the last thing you did before you left before the end of the day. It's just finding a time to do that, because otherwise it's easy to fall into a pattern of the email comes in, you immediately have to reply to it, you get back to working whatever you were working on. Another email comes in, you have to reply to it, you have to get back to working on whatever it was you were working on. So just trying to determine which items are urgent, which items can wait, and acknowledging and recognizing that not everything needs to happen immediately. The other thing that I think is very important, next 2 points, I think go hand in hand, and that is, you know, preparing your office and your staff, and also being able to delegate to members of your staff and members of your office. So the preparing part, I think, for me is letting them know, here's what you need to know about working with me. So I recently got a new administrative assistant, and she's been with the legal department for International Paper for a while. She and I have actually had become friendly before she became my assistant, but we had never worked together. And, you know, when we started working together, I said, let's sit down, let's have a meeting, me, you, as well as my paralegal, because we were all going to be working together, and sat down and said, hey, listen, from 8:30 till 10 o'clock in the morning, if I'm in the office or if I'm in town, I'm not going to be in the office because I'm going to be at the gym. If you need me during that time, or if you need something during that time, see Jennifer. That's my paralegal. I promise she'll be able to help you. You know, and she appreciated it. My assistant, Trika, appreciated it. My paralegal appreciated it. And honestly, it's not, you know, at first, 10 years ago in law practice, I would have thought, I can't tell my assistant that, or I can't tell my paralegal that, because they're going to run and tell the boss. Nicole just told me she's not coming to the office until 10 o'clock every day she's here in town. But acknowledging and recognizing that that's what I needed to be balanced, and communicating that to my staff makes it great. When somebody calls and I'm not there because I'm not at the gym, they say, I'm sorry, Ms. Greta's not available yet. I expect her in shortly. Can I have her call you back? It helps you to find the balance, and it also helps your staff acknowledge that that's important to you. The other thing is delegation. Again, this, I think, something that comes with time in practice, with time in the legal profession, thinking that if it's going to be done correctly, you have to do it yourself, but recognizing that there's wonderful staff that I hope you guys all have an opportunity to work with throughout your legal career, and there's opportunities to delegate tasks to paralegals or to junior associates, to, you know, administrative assistants, to, you know, law clerks, to other people in your office. If you're in private practice or if you're solo, you know, finding opportunities to delegate tasks to maybe an admin that you share with somebody else, or maybe you have somebody who works for you 10 to 15 hours a week and delegating tasks to that individual. All of those things will help you in the long run to achieving that infamous work-life balance. The other thing that's important in terms of trying to achieve the work-life balance is avoiding toxic business relationships. I don't know if we'll get any comments or questions on this particular point, but I hope, or I assume that those of us who've been in practice for any decent period of time have had at least one client that they wish they could fire immediately. I would encourage you, for those of you who haven't yet started practicing or who are just starting to practice, to be on the lookout for the client that's going to be the one who's going to suck the blood out of you, for lack of a better way to describe it. But those are the relationships that are oftentimes the hardest to get yourself out of. I think it's just like toxic relationships in general, whether it be a toxic friendship or a toxic romantic relationship. Those oftentimes are the hardest to find a way out of. So just being on the lookout for business relationships that may be toxic. It may be somebody who asks you to do something immediately, you know, emergencies happen, but then the next thing they have for you to do is another emergency, and then another emergency, and they're never contacting you at a time that they should be contacting you, but they're contacting you at the very last minute, and then everything that you're working on you should drop to be able to help them. Or maybe it's the clients who you give advice to, they ask you for your advice, you give them your advice, and then they don't want to hear it. And then they call you again 6 months down the line saying, hey, this happened, and it's obviously because they didn't follow your advice. So things like that, just being mindful that that can occur. The other ones that pop out and stick to mind, and come to my mind, are the people who don't want to pay your retainer, or the people who don't want to pay their bill if they're, you know, you're billing them on a monthly basis, or the people who always want something for free. And I'm not trying to suggest that you shouldn't help people out and, you know, give them discounts or do some pro bono work, because I think all those things are very important. But at the end of the day, we went to law school for a reason. We have the skills that we have and the knowledge that we have, and that's valuable and that's worthwhile, and it should be compensated for it. As Jay has said here in the chat, a good way to deal with that is, at this time, I decline representation. Best of luck with your matter. So you don't have to take every client that comes through the door. And I know that's easier said than done, especially for those of you who may be out there on your own and trying to make your way. But in the long run, you're going to be healthier. You're going to be more balanced if you avoid those toxic business relationships. We've already talked about, being transparent with your personal limitations. That goes to, setting your schedule and making time for yourself, but also making sure that you surround yourself with supportive family and friends. Those people who can help you out of a funk, those people who can recognize, hey, you've been working too much. Nicole Greta, that's my mother, she is very good at this. If she doesn't hear from me for about 48 hours, she has decided that I am somewhere in a windowless room doing work, and no one's heard from me, no one has seen me, and clearly that means I'm working too much. So whether that's your mother, whether that's your son, whether that's your wife, whether that's your best friend, whoever that person is that knows when you're just doing too much and you need a break, don't push those people away. Value their opinions and take what they have to say to heart, and make sure that you are, letting them check on you and taking the advice that they have. All right, so it looks like we have another question here. So Dana says that she remembers everyone she was around in law school was incredibly negative all the time, and that took a toll on her. She says now that she's graduated, she's noticed some of them are the same way, but luckily I don't have to see them anymore. I definitely give myself at least one day a week away from bar studies to just do me. Dana, I think that's perfect. I think you're doing exactly what you should do. The summer that I studied for the bar, I treated it like a job, but I've never worked a job where I work 7 days a week. Even when I worked at my family's restaurant, I had one day off. So, just finding what it is that grounds you, what it is that you need to be, quote, okay, what it is you need to not be so focused on one thing, whether that's studying for the bar exam or whether that's looking for a job or whether that's, the job that you're in. And obviously, you've hit the nail on the head with the negativity of some people. I think that is not a abnormal experience. I also encountered a lot of people in law school that were very negative about, law school in general, what the future held. I tried to distance myself from those people in more ways than one, both in school and since I graduated law school. So I think, again, you're doing the right thing and recognizing that those are ways in which ways in which that you might not stay as healthy and you might not have that work-life balance, or in your case, that study-life balance. I refuse to lose my happy too, Dana. That's great. I like that. All right, so kind of want to change gears a little bit from the work-life balance. I think I've beat that one to death. Hopefully some of the tips and suggestions that I've given will be helpful for you all in finding the best work-life balance for you. The next thing I want to focus on is developing healthy office habits. So this is one that I've only really become cognizant of as I've gotten older, and that's because I have a low back injury. And so I now have a standing desk. I now have an ergonomic chair. I really wish I could get one of those exercise ball chairs, but I'm pretty sure if I got that, people in my office would just ride it up and down the hall to be funny. And somebody would probably be probably get injured, and then I'd have to deal with that since I do personal injury for the company. But as you can see up here on the screen, a couple things that are important, obviously listening to your body. So for me, that means that I can't be in the same position for more than an hour with my low back issues. So yesterday I was in a deposition in Phoenix, and I told, everybody in the room, the lawyers, our clients, the court reporter, hey guys, don't think I'm rude, but at some point during this deposition, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go stand in the corner over here. I'm going to walk around, or I'm going to pace around, and it's not because I'm anxious, or it's not because, you've done something wrong, or I'm trying to distract you. I literally just can't sit still for more than an hour at a time. The other thing about listening to your body is learning when to stop for the day. So whether it's you find yourself, cross-eyed staring at your screen, or your shoulders are so tight and tense that you can't keep them down no matter what you try, or your hips or your low back or your legs are stiff, get up, move around, take a break, go home. At the end of the day, we all need our rest. I think that a lot of times lawyers learn to function on little to no sleep, which obviously is also not healthy. I mean, you could be working out every day, you could be eating right, but if you're only sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night, studies will show that you're not going to lose weight, or you're not going to lose fat, or you're not going to, quote, be healthy. Your various indicators are not going to go down if you're not getting sufficient rest, because your body doesn't have time to rejuvenate itself. So make sure you're listening to what your body's telling you in terms of, have you been at it too long? Is it time to go eat? Won't name names, but I know at least one person on the call tonight didn't have lunch till about 4 o'clock today. That's not good. We all have to eat. If you work in an office environment, keep something in the office that you can have if you don't have time to get out of the office and get lunch, or you didn't have time to pack your lunch that morning. Whether it's some fruit, or whether it's some granola, or whether it's some yogurt, or, if it's a cup of soup, if it's a bowl of soup, a cup of soup, a frozen meal in the freezer, something that you can grab if you don't have a chance to get out of the office that can only take, a couple minutes to heat up, or a couple minutes to put together, and then you have something that you've had to eat, and you're not going, 8, 9, 10 hours without having anything to eat. Like I talked about in terms of your sitting, if you can, if it's an option for you, I highly recommend sit-stand desk. There's super fancy ones, and then there's ones you can get for like $50 that just put on top of your desk and just manually go up and down. Obviously, alternating the sitting and the standing we've already talked about. One of my colleagues has one of those little, I don't know if they're called bicycles or what they're called, but it's little pedals that she has under her desk. So she gets to pedal all day, or as many times a day as she wants. So there's just all different types of things. You'd be amazed at what you can find out there. Get moving. Take a short break like we've talked about. Go walk around your office or walk around the block. You could also practice some sort of yoga or other mindfulness in your office. If you work at a place where they have a quiet room or a meditation room, take 10 minutes, take 15 minutes, and just go in there and be alone with your thoughts. If you have an office door that you can close, do some chair yoga. If you Google chair yoga, you'll find a ton of things that you can do from your chair, so that if, the managing partner in your office walks by, you're not in some compromising yoga position trying to get stretched out. So there's definitely things that you can do, even if you can't physically leave the office, to get up, to get moving, to get yourself back centered for the day. So the other thing that I want to talk a little bit about is learning to be resilient. So I feel like you can have all these things in place. You can have a work-life plan in place. You can have a fitness routine in place. You can be having all these, breaks and mental health breaks and wellness breaks and get up and move breaks. But there can be one thing that sets you over the edge, and then it's as though you haven't done any of this work. So to me, that's learning to be resilient. That's how you deal with that, how you deal with the stress-related issues that come up. We're always going to have various pressures and demands on our daily life in general. And then as lawyers who may be charged with defending somebody who's on trial for murder, or defending a company that is being sued for millions of dollars, or representing a family who lost a loved one in a horrific accident. I mean, there's any number of things that can pull on us as humans in what we do as lawyers, and how we deal with those ups and downs of our daily life and how we deal with those ups and downs of our professional life. We need to be resilient in order to bounce back and in order to continue to strive towards the ideal of having this work-life balance. Some of the defining concepts you see up there on the slide for resilience are being flexible, supple, durable, strong, having speed, recovery, and buoyancy. As you can see there too, the first bullet point, being resilient is now a defining characteristic of employees who deal well with stresses and strains. Those are the types of employees that companies and law firms and other employers want to keep. But obviously developing that resilience is going to be different for each person. It's going to be a personal journey. I think the biggest hurdle that we have in finding the ability to be resilient is reframing unproductive thinking, reframing, quote, negative energy, and being very active in that process, not just sitting back and thinking, oh, well, this will pass, being active and figuring out how you're going to get over this pressure or this demand, whatever it is that might be taking away from your daily ability to do what you need to do your job. And obviously how you deal with those things, how you deal with life's up and downs, whether they're personal or professional, is going to impact your work. It's going to impact how you're able to represent your clients. So it's very important to be able to build that resilience. So got a couple ways that we can do that up here on the screen. Again, some things that we've talked about already, but make sure that you have support both from your coworkers as well as from your family, from your friends. So making sure that you have support both at work and away from work. Also developing realistic goals and a sense of purpose. You know, what is it that you really want to do in your career, and what are you doing to work toward that? And also recognizing that, you know, bad things happen every day. Problems, adversity arises every day, but we should be able to learn from the different things and the different problems that come into our life. So taking what you can from all of those and using that to take some sort of positive action. Big one for me, avoid making drama out of a crisis. Anyone who's ever worked with me, anyone who's ever had a case with me, whether it's me being their lawyer or I've hired them to represent my company, I sometimes have a tendency to make drama out of a crisis. And so instead of saying, okay, this is just one aspect of the case, and this is the nature of personal injury defense, and we'll deal with it and we'll get over it, it's the end of the world. And so that's something that I still to this day struggle with, and that's something that I still work toward, you know, not making a big deal about it. And just saying, oh, you know, that's part of doing litigation and just trying to roll with the punches. You know, and not beating up on yourself, having a positive view of yourself, recognizing that you can't do everything every day and you can't work 12 hours every day. Again, keep a realistic perspective, making sure that you are realistic in terms of what your purpose for that day is, what you need to accomplish that week, what absolutely cannot wait until you get back from vacation. Instead of saying, I have a to-do list, it's 30 things long, there's no way I'm going to get these all done, oh my gosh, this is crazy, what am I going to do? You know, taking it in bits and pieces and being realistic in what you do, and being realistic in how you approach what you need to do. This is a great one. This is one that, again, I heard at a CLE a while back that I've built into this PowerPoint, and that's celebrate your successes. So sometimes I think we only seem to celebrate the really big successes, whether that's graduating law school or passing the bar exam or winning a big case, but just recognizing, hey, I got that brief done today and I got it done a whole day early. That's great. That's success. Taking time to do that is all very beneficial. Some of the other ones, I realize we're getting short on time here, but some of the other ways that you can build resistance is trying to be optimistic. One thing that I think as lawyers is hard to recognize is not everything is inherently bad or inherently good. So you can have a bad result, but there can be a good part of it, or you can have a good result and there can be a bad part of it. So just making that type of thinking, okay, well, this might not be the end of the world. Here's how we can spin this, or here's why this isn't the worst outcome possible for my client, or here's how I can get over this hurdle and deal with the next part of this case or next part of this client, their representation. So a couple of final wellness tips. I think these are ones that we hear, on a fairly frequent basis. So meal planning, also been a bit of a game changer for me. I, like Jay, would oftentimes not eat well because I didn't plan well. So I like to take Sundays. If I'm going to be in town, I'll take Sundays to make meals for the week. Investing in a fitness tracker. I think most people who went to law school are pretty type A, so are probably competitive. Challenge your friends, challenge your family members so you can get the most steps in. Practice mindfulness. We've talked about that. Taking some time each day to do something that centers you. The other thing that's great about Fitness Tracker, which I've started using more recently, is it can track your sleep habits. So obviously it tells you how much you sleep, but it also tells you how well you sleep. So I think that that's helpful for the reasons we talked about earlier. Eliminating stress in your personal life. This is also, in my opinion, game-changing, whether that's hiring a cleaning service or you want to do the meal planning but you don't have time to do the meal planning, hiring somebody to do your meal planning, whether it's, just eliminating toxic people in your life, toxic relationships in your life. All those things help eliminate stress from your life. They're also going to eliminate stress from your professional life because you're not going to be distracted by those things. And of course, join the P.A.D Health Initiative. I hope all of you follow that on Facebook. We also have some awesome gear that you can get. I encourage you guys all to share your fitness journeys on there. I like to say that we all have to start somewhere. Those of you who I may be friends with on Facebook know that I joined this fitness studio back in October. When I first joined, I literally could not run to save my life. Like if I was being chased, I'd probably just have to just give up. And so I started going and I started walking, and my goal was to not throw up. My goal was to make it through the class. And now, almost 9 months later, I run through all the drills. I do almost all the things we do on the floor. It's very similar to an Orange Theory concept. It's with 15 minutes on treadmills, 15 minutes on the floor, and then you repeat that. So it's an hour-long class. There's just different things for different people. Could be getting out and walking every day. Some of you guys are marathon runners. It could be, working toward your next marathon or your next PR, personal record. Is that what that means? I'm not a runner. So, but in any event, just, get out there and do something. Do something healthy, whether it's eating healthy, working out, drinking water. Important to drink enough water. And so, I've used up my time. I talked with Andrew earlier in the week, and he said, are you going to have enough information to fill up a whole hour? And I said, I don't know, but I'm a trial lawyer after all, so I'm sure I'll figure out something to talk about. But I am happy to answer questions if people have more questions. I'll also give you guys all my email address in case you want me to either send you a copy of this PowerPoint or any other resources that I might have come across about the various topics we've talked about, or if you have a question but you don't want to ask it right now, you can certainly email it to me. My email address is Nicole, Nicole.Grida, Grida, @gmail.com. And I also believe that it's up on the P.A.D. website. If you go to the International Executive Board, I think all of our email addresses are linked there as well. So, Andrew, I don't know if we have any other questions that I'm not seeing, or if anyone has sent you any private questions.
I don't have any private questions, but I really thank you for your time tonight, and thank you to all the participants. I think you had some great information and tips. I know I learned a few too, so I really appreciate it.